When Valtteri Bottas speaks about Lewis Hamilton, he does it with a tone only another driver can truly earn. That blend of admiration and realism forged in 6 seasons inside the same garage. He knows what it means to spend Monday mornings dissecting every telemetry overlay, every braking trace, every radio note that told the difference between dominance and defeat. So when he says Hamilton deserves great results at Ferrari, it isn't a polite headline. It's an insider's assessment of a driver still capable of brilliance but trapped in transition. Bottas has seen what change does to rhythm. At Mercedes, Hamilton's inputs were instinctive: late brake, mid-corner rotation, clean exit. But at Ferrari, those instincts fight the SF25's unpredictable aero balance and torque curve. The car's energy recovery system deploys differently, the throttle mapping feels heavier, and the weight transfer through slow corners resists his natural flow. Bottas calls it tricky. That's Finnish understatement for alien. It's easy to forget how much muscle memory drives consistency. Hamilton's style was built on machinery that responded instantly to micro-adjustments. At Ferrari, milliseconds turn into hesitation. Each tenth of a second lost in traction control, or ERS timing, multiplies across 70 laps. A margin Bottas understands, because he once lived in that shadow. And yet, his words carry no bitterness. He recognizes the courage it takes to rebuild from scratch at 40 years old, to risk legacy for redemption. Bottas's hope that Hamilton gets it right isn't nostalgia. It's respect for a man still fighting to master a new language of speed. But the question lingering under that respect is brutal. Can experience overcome unfamiliarity, or has Hamilton reached the edge where instinct meets limitation? Underneath the red bodywork of Ferrari's SF25 lies an engine that feels nothing like the power units Hamilton once commanded. To the casual fan, 750 horsepower is 750 horsepower. But to a driver whose throttle foot has memorized every vibration of a Mercedes powertrain, this new rhythm feels foreign. The Ferrari's torque curve delivers its surge earlier, peaking around 11,000 revolutions per minute, while the energy recovery system releases electrical power more aggressively out of medium-speed corners. That means Hamilton's usual habit, feathering the throttle mid-apex to control rear rotation, now unsettles the car instead of stabilizing it. Inside the cockpit, the difference is measured not in seconds, but sensations. Where the Mercedes W14 offered smooth progressive acceleration, the SF25 snaps between regeneration and deployment like a nervous heartbeat. The moment Hamilton asks for traction, the rear tyres light up, sending a burst of oversteer that forces him to counter-steer earlier and harder. Engineers call it torque harmonics. Hamilton calls it mismatch. Each lap demands micro-corrections. Each micro-correction compounds the tyre wear. By lap 20, the degradation curve steepens by nearly 7% compared to Leclerc's smoother style. Ferrari's hybrid maps also differ in philosophy. Mercedes designed theirs to prioritize drivability, masking imperfections through subtle torque blending. Ferrari, chasing qualifying speed, built an aggressive mapping that favors short bursts of deployment, brilliant for time attack laps, brutal across stints. It's a car that rewards precision and punishes adaptation. For Hamilton, whose mastery once came from improvisation, it feels like painting with gloves on. What makes this challenge more complex is political as much as technical. Every setup request, from differential preload to ERS harvest rate, filters through layers of Maranello tradition. At Mercedes, adjustments were conversation. At Ferrari, they're debate. And as Hamilton learns the nuances of Italian engineering culture, the stopwatch remains unforgiving. Yet buried inside those tenths of loss, there's a glimmer. Data showing consistent Sector 3 improvement since the summer break. Proof that the adaptation might finally be taking hold. Every Formula One driver lives with doubt. Most hide it behind bravado, others drown it in data. Lewis Hamilton dissects it. For 2 decades, his ability to transform pressure into rhythm has been his secret weapon. But at Ferrari, that rhythm keeps breaking. Bottas understood that when he spoke of how tricky it is to change environments. He wasn't referring to culture shock, he meant identity shock. At Mercedes, Hamilton was the pulse of the operation, the driver whose feedback shaped chassis philosophy and aerodynamic direction. At Ferrari, he's learning to become fluent in a new dialect of engineering hierarchy, one that values history as much as innovation. But when the stopwatch stops moving in your favour, the silence grows loud. Insiders at Maranello describe Hamilton's early debriefs as forensic but tense. He arrived expecting responsiveness. Instead, he found a structure still defined by legacy. Engineers used phrases like "abbiamo sempre fatto così." We've always done it this way. It's a sentence that has haunted Ferrari for 20 years. For Hamilton, it's a warning bell. This friction is psychological, not hostile. Ferrari reveres champions, but tests them too. And for a driver whose greatness was built on harmony between instinct and machine, the constant resistance forces him into unfamiliar territory. Patience. His old weapon was control. Now, his new one might have to be resilience. Bottas's comments that Hamilton deserves great results carry a subtext. Only those who have stood under the same spotlight understand that legacy alone guarantees nothing. Hamilton's battle is no longer with Verstappen or Leclerc, but with entropy, the gradual erosion of certainty. Yet in that erosion lies the beginning of something more dangerous: recalibration. Since the summer break, his radio messages have changed tone. Fewer complaints, more problem-solving. The old frustration has turned analytical again. It's the same psychological pivot that defined his comebacks at Silverstone in 2021 and Istanbul in 2020. History suggests that when Hamilton reaches this state of controlled defiance, performance usually follows. And the first signs of that resurgence began not with a victory, but with an 8th place that felt like a declaration. When Hamilton crossed the line 8th in Singapore, the world saw another forgettable result. But inside the Ferrari garage, engineers noticed something different. There was no slammed visor, no silence on the radio. Instead, Hamilton keyed the mic and said, "I'm really proud of this team." It wasn't a routine message, it was a calculated one. Because in Formula One, words are telemetry too. Hamilton's post-race reflection that night: progress alone is not enough. This is Ferrari. To achieve greatness, we need to go further. It wasn't for social media engagement. It was leadership by inference. He wasn't congratulating, he was challenging. It's the same communication pattern he once used at Mercedes during their early hybrid era, teething problems in 2014, subtle pressure disguised as motivation, and the engineers at Maranello heard it loud and clear. In the week that followed, Ferrari's debrief logs show an unusual volume of driver feedback integrated directly into setup simulations, something that rarely happened in the first half of the season. Hamilton's input on brake migration balance, aerodynamic load through turn 13 and thermal management in sector 3 became priorities. That shift wasn't technical coincidence. It was cultural evolution. Internally, senior race engineer Riccardo Adami described Hamilton's tone as reset. The driver who once felt out of sync with the car had begun to treat adaptation as collaboration. His telemetry consistency improved by 0.27% per lap over the following 3 races, an invisible statistic that speaks louder than podiums. And that's where Bottas's earlier words come full circle. When he said, "I hope he bounces back," he wasn't wishing for luck. He was recognizing the mindset that creates momentum, the same rhythm Hamilton is beginning to rebuild. The Singapore Grand Prix wasn't redemption, but it was the moment Ferrari realized their new driver had stopped trying to fit in and started trying to lead. The only question left is whether Maranello will follow. Ferrari has always admired greatness, but struggled to obey it. The history books are filled with champions who walked through Maranello's gates, believing their aura alone could bend the Scuderia to their will. Fernando Alonso tried, Sebastian Vettel tried, even Michael Schumacher, the one who succeeded, only did so after transforming Ferrari from within. For every world champion who entered the Red Fortress, the same pattern emerged: respect first, resistance second. In Alonso's era, data was questioned, strategies were debated, and the word foreign echoed in the corridors like a quiet accusation. Vettel brought warmth and a technical depth, yet clashed with an engineering philosophy that resisted external input. Each left Ferrari frustrated, admired by fans, defeated by culture. That is the ghost Lewis Hamilton is now racing. When Bottas said, "It's not easy changing a team after such a long time at Mercedes," he didn't just mean learning new buttons on a steering wheel. He meant navigating politics coded into the DNA of the Scuderia. The engineers who design the car also guard its identity. Change happens, but slowly, like cooling carbon after a fire. And yet, something about Hamilton's presence feels different. Perhaps it's the authority of 7 world titles. Perhaps it's his willingness to frame criticism as collaboration. Ferrari's senior management has begun adjusting meeting formats around his debriefs. Small changes, but telling ones, more English used in technical discussions, more integration of simulation data over intuition. For a team rooted in heritage, that's evolution in real time. But there's another reason Hamilton may succeed where Alonso and Vettel failed: timing. The 2026 regulation reset looms like a clean slate. New engines, new chassis, new energy systems. In those moments of upheaval, culture bends to competence. Hamilton knows that window is coming, and every radio message, every debrief, every public statement feels aimed at positioning Ferrari not just to survive the reset, but to define it. The only unknown is whether history will repeat itself, or whether this time Ferrari lets a foreign king rule the kingdom. Every driver who stays long enough in Formula One eventually meets the same paradox. Experience sharpens the mind but dulls the reflexes. The trick is to convert wisdom into anticipation, to see change coming before the rest do. That's exactly where Lewis Hamilton now operates. He knows 2026 isn't just another season. It's a revolution. The new power units will feature 50% electric deployment. Aerodynamic concepts will shift toward active surfaces, and the chassis philosophy will compress the performance delta between the front and midfield by almost half a second per lap. For Ferrari, that's not a threat, it's an opportunity. And Hamilton has lived through this before. He was there when Mercedes mastered the 2014 hybrid revolution, turning a clean sheet regulation into an 8-year dynasty. Inside Maranello, whispers already suggest Hamilton's fingerprints on Ferrari's long-term 2026 development strategy. His input sessions now include discussions on energy recovery thresholds, brake-by-wire calibration, and aerodynamic wake optimization, all elements that define the next era. He isn't waiting for the new car to arrive, he's shaping its DNA. That's why Bottas's statement, "I hope he gets it right," resonates far beyond friendship. In the paddock, it reads as recognition from one professional to another, an acknowledgement that Hamilton might be building his last empire. And it's telling that even rivals are watching. McLaren's Andrea Stella reportedly remarked privately that if Ferrari lets Lewis steer the engineering vision, they'll be dangerous. Even Red Bull engineers have admitted off record that Hamilton's long-game thinking, particularly his insistence on simulation loop refinements, mirrors the philosophy that once made Mercedes unbeatable. But all revolutions come with resistance. Inside Ferrari, traditionalists still argue that the Scuderia should maintain its Italian core. For them, Hamilton's analytical method feels too corporate, too sterile. Yet history favours the adaptable. In a sport where innovation erases legacy overnight, Hamilton's greatest advantage might be the very thing Ferrari once feared: his refusal to think like them. As 2026 approaches, the question becomes not whether Hamilton will adapt to Ferrari, but whether Ferrari can evolve fast enough to keep up with Hamilton. When Valtteri Bottas said he deserves great results, he wasn't just speaking for himself. That sentiment rippled through a paddock that once viewed Hamilton as untouchable, a man whose dominance was mistaken for inevitability. But now, stripped of Mercedes' supremacy, battling through the chaos of Ferrari's transition, he has become something rarer, a champion the grid quietly roots for. Behind closed doors, even rivals acknowledge it. In the hospitality units, engineers from McLaren, Aston Martin and Red Bull often compare telemetry traces, not to criticise Hamilton's decline, but to marvel at his consistency under pressure. Despite a car that oscillates between brilliance and instability, his race pace remains within 3/10 of Charles Leclerc across identical stints. That number tells a story no headline captures: precision without perfection. Bottas, ever the realist, recognises that Hamilton's greatest weapon is now endurance, not speed. Few drivers survive the psychological grind of starting over at 40. Most fade into ceremonial roles: last laps, farewell tours, sponsor obligations. Hamilton has chosen reinvention instead. It's the kind of defiance that earns respect, even from those who once measured themselves against his shadow. What makes Bottas's words powerful is that they come without nostalgia. There's no longing for the Mercedes days, no mythologizing their shared past. It's an engineer's verdict on a competitor who refuses statistical extinction. The same Bottas, who once spent entire seasons chasing Hamilton's delta traces, can now admit publicly that what Lewis is attempting borders on unprecedented. Across the grid, this shift has changed how drivers see longevity. Fernando Alonso's late career renaissance opened the door. Hamilton is trying to walk through it, carrying the weight of Ferrari's history. That difference matters. Because if Hamilton succeeds, even partially, he won't just rewrite his legacy. He'll redefine how long greatness can survive in a sport that devours it. And in that sense, Bottas's message isn't just hope, it's prophecy. Legacy in Formula One is usually written in silver, blue or gold. Colours of dominance, not endurance. Yet Lewis Hamilton may end up remembered in red, not for the number of trophies he adds, but for what he proves about persistence. The statistics already define him. More than 100 Grand Prix wins, 104 pole positions, 7 world titles. But Ferrari offers him something statistics never could, the chance to humanise his greatness. In Maranello, Hamilton is learning what all legends eventually face, the slow disassembly of myth. Every lap in a car that resists him strips away the illusion of invincibility, leaving only the will to rebuild. It's the same arc Schumacher endured when he joined Ferrari in 1996, years of frustration before glory. The difference is that Hamilton's window is narrower and the world is louder. Social media amplifies every mistake, every radio sigh, every sideways glance. Yet the noise hides a quieter truth. He's rebuilding the bond between driver and brand that Ferrari hasn't felt since Kimi Räikkönen crossed the line in 2008. Internally, Ferrari executives see the commercial ripple already. Merchandise sales in the UK have risen nearly 20% since Hamilton's arrival. Simulator sessions draw engineers from other departments just to observe his feedback style. His presence has turned Ferrari from a heritage team into a global experiment in reinvention. For the sport itself, that matters. Because Formula One is evolving beyond lap times. It's becoming a laboratory for endurance, physical, mental, cultural. Hamilton's persistence inside Ferrari could redefine how long a driver remains relevant, how experience translates into innovation, and how legacy can coexist with learning. And perhaps that's why Bottas's words landed with such weight. He deserves great results isn't just about podiums, it's about closure. The chance for the most decorated driver of his generation to finish his story on his own terms. If Hamilton succeeds, it won't just be Ferrari's redemption. It'll be proof that even in a sport obsessed with youth and data, there's still room for something as old-fashioned as faith. Formula One doesn't often grant second acts, and it never guarantees happy endings. Yet somehow, Lewis Hamilton has found himself in the rarest of positions. A 7-time world champion chasing not records, but relevance. What began as a struggle to tame Ferrari's unpredictable machinery has evolved into something larger, a campaign to redefine what adaptation means at the top level of motorsport. Technically, the evidence is already mounting. Ferrari's latest updates show Hamilton's influence in measurable form. Brake-by-wire calibration refined by his feedback, new energy recovery cycles tuned to his throttle inputs, and simulation loops incorporating his preferred corner entry data. On paper, those are incremental adjustments. In reality, they mark the slow synchronization between driver and machine that precedes every breakthrough season. Psychologically, his posture has changed. The frustration that colored his early races has been replaced by a controlled intensity, the same mindset that powered his comebacks at Istanbul and Silverstone. He has stopped demanding instant perfection and started constructing it one engineering meeting at a time. Ferrari, for its part, seems to be responding, less defensive, more curious, increasingly aware that Hamilton's persistence could become their competitive edge. For Bottas, and for those who once lined up alongside Hamilton on the grid, that persistence represents something universal, the refusal to let time dictate talent. It's why his quiet hope resonates beyond the paddock, because deep down, every driver knows the same truth. Formula One doesn't remember sympathy, it remembers those who adapted faster than entropy. So the question that lingers now isn't whether Hamilton can still win races. It's whether he can reshape Ferrari before Ferrari reshapes him. Is this the birth of his final masterpiece, a collaboration that redeems both man and machine, or the slow fading echo of a legend chasing harmony that may never come? Whatever the answer, the next chapter will decide it.